Nanami Kento is a pretty interesting character and easily a fan favorite, and a lot of people have been asking to see some sort of video on it because he is quite strong. He is at the height of the modern day sorcerers, a grade 1 sorcerer, and we did get to see him in action quite a lot, so we know pretty well on how strong he is. And actually, funny enough, for the channel members, they actually get to decide what video comes out, and for the how strong is video, which I'm doing now, was between Toji, Yuta, Yuji, and Nanami, and Nanami, he actually won, which I'm not gonna lie, I was very shocked when I saw that. But it does go to show you, people want to hear more about this character because he doesn't get talked about that much considering he has such a big role in the story. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. How strong is Nanami Kento? And of course, if you enjoyed the video, please do be sure to subscribe. I have a ton of videos just like this on the channel. So Jujutsu Kaisen, what ifs, versus battles, breakdowns, just a whole bunch. So if you like Jujutsu Kaisen, please do subscribe. And a like wouldn't hurt as well. Thanks. And of course, thank you to all of the special raid and honored one members of the channel, which is just that guy Trey. Thank you, man, you're a legend. Alright, now to actually start and break down just how strong he is. So obviously he's a grade 1 sorcerer, that's pretty much the most basic thing about him, and something everyone I hope would know. I guess briefly before I actually talk about current Nanami, I'll talk about Nanami when he was in his first and second year of Jujutsu High, so when he was a young guy. He was incredibly weak, to the point that him and Haibara together both lost a grade 1 curse. And they didn't just lose, they got absolutely bodied, as Haibara actually died. Which is pretty crazy because that goes to show you that both of them combined aren't as strong as a semi-grade 1 or even a grade 2 sorcerer, as a grade 2 sorcerer alone should be able to compete with a grade 1 curse. Now, not beat them outright, but at the very least compete. So if I had to guess, I would say Nanami at this point during the hidden inventory was probably maybe semi-grade 2, grade 3. Grade 3 would make the most sense since most sorcerers during those 2 years are about semi-grade 2, grade 2 maybe, grade 3. It's actually pretty crazy because even being a grade 2 in your first year is considered an anomaly. So Megami being a grade 2 in his first year was considered very impressive, which I know may seem weird because we have all of these insanely powerful grade 1 sorcerers in their first years, such as Nobita easily being semi-grade 1 at the bare minimum, and Yuji and Megami both being top 5 of all of the modern day grade 1 sorcerers in terms of how strong they are. But enough of that, let's actually get down to the main Nanami, the Nanami that we all love and like. Well, I guess it's the same person, but you know what I mean. So the current day Nanami is pretty weird to scale because some people say he's really weak, some people say he's really strong, and it's not as simple as saying he's just grade 1 and slapping that label on him. A large chunk of the characters in the series are actually grade 1 level. I think the vast majority all fit into that category. Considering the fact that grade 1 should be the height of Jujutsu sorcery, that's kind of sad. But I guess it does make sense since all of the things that we're seeing in the series, we're seeing all the major events, all the strongest characters, so you would expect everyone to be at this level. So there is a massive discrepancy of where Nanami lies within that scale. And myself, I've actually split the grade 1 category into 2 halves. So I have the normal grade 1s and I have Supreme grade 1. Now just to clarify, the official title of Supreme grade 1 in the series is nothing more than a title. It's not actually a difference of strength. So Naobito, Ogi, Jinichi, Naoya, all of these characters have the title of Supreme Grade, but they are in reality just as strong as a grade 1 sorcerer. It is simply just a title. But coincidentally, all of the people who have the title of Supreme Grade 1 just really happen to be some of the strongest sorcerers we've seen in the grade 1 category, which does make sense since you'd expect the strongest members of the top 3 clans to be at the very top of even the grade 1s. But I like to actually just split it down into 2 halves. So Supreme Grade 1 as my own headcanon thing to separate the stronger grade 1s with the regular grade 1s, which would be the lower half. Now, I actually had Nanami in the middle of the pack of the grade 1 sorcerers in my own tier list, so in case you didn't know, I actually ranked every single Jujutsu Kaisen character. It's actually an hour and 14-minute video long. I made a newer and more modern version of that video pretty recently, so if you want to check that out, please do. It's in the description, or it's just on my channel page. But I had Nanami around where I placed Principal Yaga, Yuji during the death painting arc, as well as Gakuganji, pretty much around that tip. Now, the reason why I've scaled base Nanami this low, and in all defense, honestly looking back, I would actually put Nanami higher. I would actually put him around where I put Kusakabe and the Rhino version of Panda. Now, the reason I ranked him so lowly in base, so keep in mind this is not his overtime form, his base form, is actually because there is a pretty common argument going around the community that Nanami is pretty weak. Now, the reason people think this is because of his showcasing during the fight with Mahito, and I mean the finalized fight in the high school. Now, again, it's crazy that because he's fighting Mahito of all people are downplaying him, but that's not the reason. It's the fact that he's scaling directly to Yuji. And keep in mind, this is a Yuji pre-Goodwill training, so he did not have the amps that he got with the training that he did of Todo. So this Yuji really isn't that strong at all, let's be real. I mean, in my own tier list, I put this Yuji on the lower end of semi-grade 1, and this was the enraged version of Yuji when he fought Mahito. Now again, as I just said, that's why Nanami gets scaled so lowly, is because he is pretty clearly on the same level or tier as this Yuji. That is the main argument that gets thrown around a lot, and because of this, people really underscale Nanami. And I mean a lot because of this. Because they're saying, if he's only scaling to this version of Yuji, imagine Yuji after Goodwill, or in Shibuya, or even during Tokyo Colony. Like, Nanami doesn't scale to him at all. He should get one shot by this Yuji or something. Well, maybe not one shot, but he should be completely outscaled. And actually, pretty recently, after giving it a lot of thought, it's just not true. I don't blame people for thinking this way on a surface level, but if you actually look into it, there is a lot of context and evidence to suggest that he's far stronger than this version of Yuji. And by this version, I mean the Yuji who was fighting Mahito alongside him. Remember, the only reason Yuji was even relevant in that fight, and let's be honest, is only relevant in all of the Mahito fights, is because he is the perfect counter to Mahito. And not just in one way, where the soul manipulation doesn't affect him, obviously because of Sukuna, and on top of that, the domain is useless against him because of Sukuna. But Yuji's attacks actually can damage Mahito's very soul. So Yuji has not one, not two, but 3 whole buffs and direct counters against Mahito that no other character has. And again, this goes down to Yuji being plot G, you know, he's the MC, he's got all this plot armor and all of these plot abilities to really just give him favors in pretty much every fight he's in, even though he still loses a lot of them. Okay, enough of the Yuji slap. But I hope that explains why Yuji was so relevant in that fight, even though Nanami was way stronger than him. In that situation, Nanami would body Yuji had they fought one-on-one. It would be pretty brutal, because again, this is a Yuji pre-Goodwill training, pre-Toto fight, pre-Hanami fight, pre-Death Painting arc, and pre-Shibuya. It's pre all of that. Nanami would decimate him pretty badly. The only reason that they seem so relevant, or I guess that they seem so comparable, because again, it really does seem that way in the fight because they're going hand to hand, is really because Yuji's only form of relevancy, or I guess the only reason he was relevant at all in that fight, was because of all of the insanely plot-based counters that he had against Mahito. Had he not had any of that, he would have not be useful against Mahito at all in that situation. Mahito would cook his ass, let's be real. And one other thing I want to say, just because they're fighting side by side, I hate this stupid argument that I always see that they're relevant to each other. Just because two characters are fighting side by side, that does not mean that they are on the same level or tier. It is such a horrendous argument that I always see, because people always say, oh wow, look, Yuji was fighting alongside Nanami and they're fighting relevantly. Again, beside all the plot reasons which I've just spent a couple minutes talking about, even if Yuji was very powerful alone without all those plots, let's say he's like semi-grade 1 and Nanami is grade 1, they can still fight alongside of each other. Just because they're fighting equally or they're fighting very well together, that does not mean they're on the same tier. And there are plenty of examples, such as Death Painting arc Yuji being pretty blatantly above Death Painting arc Nobara, and keep in mind, Nobara's still very powerful. I think she was semi-grade 1 at that point. I just have Yuji being grade 1. They're fighting alongside each other the whole time. That doesn't mean they are the exact same level of strength. Or I guess this could go back into an even better example is Naobito and Nanami. When they fought Dagon, the whole fight, they were fighting pretty evenly. They were both insanely relevant in that fight. But Dagon makes a pretty clear statement how Naobito's stronger, so he wants to spend 70% of his domain's guarantee hit on Naobito, 30% on Nanami. Had Dagon not done that or said that, you could easily assume, or I guess with this poor logic that people use to downplay Nanami with Yuji during the Mahito fight, you would just assume that Naobito and Nanami are on the same level because they're fighting Dagon equally, which again, we know for a fact that's not true. So I hope that can just explain why Nanami really is not as weak as he seems, because he gets downplayed so much because of this Mahito bout, and because this pre-Goodwill Yuji is equivalent to him. He's really not. This Yuji is just plot based and has a trillion hacks and counters against Mahito that barely make him relevant in this fight, which Nanami does. And again, no slander to my boy Yuji, even though I kind of slandered him. It's just how it is. Now, how strong is Nanami in actuality? We've seen that he is pretty much a solid grade 1 in base, and I mean he's like solidly grade 1, because even Nobara, who I want to say is like mid tier, maybe even high tier, semi-grade 1, when she looks at Nanami during the Shibuya arc, she's like, oh shit, this is a grade 1 right here. This is the peak of power. Like, this is someone who's at the height of the modern sorcerers. So obviously, clearly, Nanami is just no joke. So that's why I honestly just put him around how strong Megami was during Shibuya, Kusakabe, probably Panda when he transforms into his Rhino, given that's pretty headcanony, and it's also where I place Noritoshi during the Sakurajima colony, which is a pretty good placement. Now, had Hakari gone overtime, sorry, not Hakari, had Nanami gone overtime, obviously he gets a massive boost in power. So pretty much the way overtime works, it's a pretty cool ability, I'm not gonna lie. Nanami, whenever he's working on the clock, or whenever he's working on a mission, or for Jujutsu High, for whatever reason, he made a binding vow to actively have the amount of cursed energy that he can use to only 80 or 90%. So whenever he's on the clock, he's never at 100%, can never use the full extent of his abilities. Because of this binding vow, whenever he's gone past the normal hours, or whenever he's working longer than he had to work, or when he was assigned to by Jujutsu High, or by whatever his workplace is, he enters the state of overtime. And when he's at overtime, he can actually use 110 to 120% of his power. It is a pretty cool and strong binding vow. You know, it's pretty simple, it's nothing too over the top, but it does give him this great boost in power. And the thing is, there is a way out of this binding vow too. So let's say Nanami is working on the clock and he really just needs 100% of his power, 80 or 90% isn't going to cut it, or he's going to die. He can actively choose, so for that day, to break the binding vow and just use 100% of his normal power. If he does that, then even if he goes overtime in that same day, he won't be able to go 110 to 120%. So yes, he does have the option of breaking the binding vow for the day and just going straight to 100%, but then he wouldn't be able to use overtime. So it's not like he's kind of set himself up for death, if you know what I mean. And then obviously we have his technique that he's most known for, the ratio technique. Yes, Twitter's most favorite word and most favorite curse technique, the ratio. Pretty much when he sees an opponent, he can choose any of their limbs or body or whatever, and he can draw a line on them that has 10 points, or I guess 10 lines on it. If he hits the 7:3 ratio on that body, it would greatly increase his attack power because it forcibly creates a weak spot for his opponent. So it's not exactly the most OP or super powerful technique in the world, but it is pretty strong because even if someone's stronger than you, or even if something's very durable or tough, with this curse technique, you can forcibly create a weakness or forcibly make them weaker when you attack them. And he also has an extension of this called Collapse. Collapse is an ability where he can pretty much apply this concept but to the environment, or to just inanimate objects. So this was actually what he used to destroy the underground tunnel when he was fighting Mahito, where he just literally destroyed the whole underground tunnel with this technique. It's pretty cool. So again, he's not just limited to actual opponents that are flesh and blood. He can actually use this on the environment, change the terrain, and as we saw in the Mahito fight, actually trap him. And of course, he also has the revealing one's hand, I guess, binding vow. It's a pretty common binding vow that a vast majority of sorcerers have. I mean, even Toji has this, which is really weird. Toji has no cursed energy, so how did he make a binding vow? I don't know. Well, I guess the Heavenly Instruction is a binding vow in itself, isn't it? But pretty much, if he discloses his technique to his opponent, so if he just explains how a technique works, regardless of if the opponent wants to hear it or not, or actually accepts it, if Nanami explains the technique to him, he can pretty much use the maximum output in his next attack. So it's kind of a trade-off. And of course, Nanami is a user of the Black Flash. Well, I guess everyone can be a user, but Nanami is just one of the best users we've ever seen of it. So pretty much the Black Flash is really, really rare to hit. It's very hard to do, even by command. It's super rare. I know Yuji was just spamming the hell out of it. We all know he's the MC. He has the plot on his side. That's how he was able to do it. The person who actually holds the record for the most, well, before Yuji, was actually Nanami. So yeah, before Yuji broke his record, I think it was around 3 to 5 times or something where he did it consecutively. Even to hit it once is crazy. So the fact that he did this is nuts. And in case you didn't know, Black Flash is pretty much mean however hard you just hit your opponent, it's pretty much 2.5 times stronger than how hard it would normally hit. And of course, the most basic thing is Nanami has a great amount of cursed energy. And this is a pretty good example to show you all that you can actively gain more cursed energy pretty fast depending on your situation or as time goes on. Because for some reason, a lot of people don't really know that you can actively increase your cursed energy by massive amounts as you keep training and come out of these life and death battles. The best example is Megumi, who was probably semi-grade 1 by the start of the series, and right now he is easily the top 5 of all grade 1 and supreme grade 1 sorcerers. I honestly have him as the current strongest right now of everyone who's alive. And we know that Megumi has actively increased his cursed energy. Megumi had honestly a pitiful amount of cursed energy when the series started. Even during Goodwill, he could only summon the elephant I think once, or it was something along the lines of where he could only use the elephant once, or he could only use the elephant alone so he couldn't have other Shikigami. When you compare that to Megumi now, who could spam the elephant many times as he wants, he can use his domain expansion. The amount of cursed energy Megumi has right now compared to even the Goodwill or especially the beginning of the series is not comparable, and this is because Megumi obviously has got a lot of mental amps, he has a lot of talent, he's come out of a lot of life and death situations, a lot of life and death battles which have greatly boosted his abilities, and obviously his constant training. So all these things combined actually increase the amount of cursed energy that Megumi has just normally. And the reason I'm bringing up this Megumi example is because this is exactly what's happened in Nanami's life. So obviously we know when he was a first or second year during the hidden inventory, he was pretty weak, but as we see him nowadays, he's so powerful that even when Mahito initially tried to affect his soul, Nanami had such a high amount of cursed energy. Granted, it's the amount a grade 1 should have. He had so much of it that he subconsciously guarded his own soul with cursed energy, which again, in case you didn't know this, you can actually do that. If you have a lot of cursed energy, you can actually guard and protect your soul with cursed energy. So this is why I always say Mahito's ideal transfiguration probably wouldn't work on Yuto or Gojo. But I digress. The whole point is the amount of cursed energy Nanami has greatly increased since he was a student. But that's pretty much all there is to Nanami. And by the way, I did say how strong I thought base Nanami was. If I had to say how strong overtime Nanami is, I would, to be honest, keep him where I placed him initially, but I would increase him maybe a place or two. So maybe above base Sakari. But honestly, that can be argued either way. And that's pretty much all there is to it to Nanami. I really do hope you guys enjoyed this video. A lot of people wanted to see some topics on Nanami, a video on Nanami, because unfortunately there isn't that many on him considering the fact that he's such a pivotal and vital character to the series. But if you did enjoy the video, please do be sure to subscribe because I have a ton of Jujutsu Kaisen content just like this on channel. You know, what ifs versus battles, just a whole bunch. If you like Jujutsu Kaisen, please do consider it. And also, if you did enjoy the video, a like would greatly help. And it also tells me you want to see more videos like this. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Nanami Kento. I'm pretty interested to see what you guys think. Do you guys think he's rated pretty fairly? We all know generally where he scales, you know, in that grade 1, supreme grade 1 category, but where would you place him along this line? Where do you think Nanami scales compared to characters like Todo, the smallpox deity, Meme, Yuji in Shibuya, current Megumi, Naobito? Well, I guess we know Naobito since we had the daggone 7:3 ratio, perhaps ironically by GEGE's own puns, whatever he's trying to do. And also thank you to all the members of the channel. You guys are really cool. Honest to God, you guys make these things possible. So thank you all. I really appreciate it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Take care guys and have a nice day.